Greetings. I'm Kim Aston, your host of Kim Aston's Disclosure Hour. Glad you're here. We have an exciting night. We are going to be covering Cosmic Disclosures, Season 1, Episode 6, Secrets at the South Pole. And we're going to talk about everything that Emery knows about it, all the fascinating things. We're going to talk about a little alien Atacama being, the Atta being. You may have already heard of it. And we're just going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have some people in the chat hopefully later that will join us. And if not, we'll just cut it short and see everybody next week. We'll see how it goes. You never know who's going to be in the chat and who's going to come talk with us. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get started. So 2 weeks ago, we did episode 5, and we talked about the bases that are under the earth. So now we're moving on to actual bases that have ancient ruins, actually underground facilities that have ancient ruins. And so there's actually a lot of ancient ruins under the ground all over the world. And Emery knows of a particular base in the south, or a particular underground ruin in the South Pole. Now, that said, I do have some exciting news for you. In the sneak peek, which I put out earlier in the week, I did mention that we had some explosive news, which Emery Smith had mentioned 10 years ago, that there has been confirmation that below let me just read it. It's easier if I just read it. So Emery told us 10 years ago about there being a mile-deep city below the pyramids. Recently, in mainstream news, they have stated that radar indicates a massive void beneath the pyramids and a big ancient city beneath. Radar expert Lawrence Conyers said there is likelihood that 5 smaller structures found just below the surface may be there because of the history of the area. Conyers said that the area was sacred to ancient civilizations even before the pyramids were constructed, according to the Daily Mail. The wild claims have contributed to a growing interest in the possibility of a discovery of ancient texts and other resources from Egyptian myths. So Emery had stated this 10 years ago, and he had said that the things that we will find, and he says that in this episode, the things that we will find will be remnants of exhibitions that were conducted by ancient people long, long ago, maybe thousands of years ago. And that's what this article states, that the things that are down there are possibly not from the actual ancient city that was there, but from early excavation people conducting excavations. You get my meaning, right? Anyway, so, hey, it's been a long week, but I'm here, and we're going to do this, and we're going to have some fun, because that's what we're all about, right? We're all about sharing and having fun and having disclosure, and I really enjoy being with you guys. I might cut back a little bit because I am so busy I have a big family, and everybody's got events and things to go to, so we might cut this back a little bit to maybe twice a month instead of every week. But I'm here tonight. I'm so glad to be here. I hope that we have some people in the chat, and we're just going to get into it like we always do and dive deep and have so much fun. So I just had to get that out of the way. Emery, he deserves some kudos from you guys because he's given us disclosure way sooner than mainstream media is. And it's very exciting. So it gives credence to whatever else he's saying, right? So we're just going to keep listening in. And Cosmic Disclosure, this is just the beginning of the episodes, so or the series. This is season 1. You've got a long ways to go. So who knows what Emery's going to say, right? And all those other episodes and seasons. And there's 27 seasons. And so, it's just exciting. And the guests are amazing. And it's just disclosure like crazy. In fact, Emery just had a podcast earlier today that I couldn't come to, but I will watch later, that So yeah, you just want to check out, you want to go to emerysmith.co and check out his latest podcast with Sebastian. It's just amazing. And this is part 2 of their podcast together, of his interview, Sebastian's interview. So it's pretty exciting. So let's move on. So now David Wilcock has a secret person that gives him intel. And this guy's name is Pete Peterson. So I don't know how secret that is, but he gives him intel, right? But he mentions Pete Peterson a lot to Emery, asking Emery, can you confirm this, what Pete said? And so anyway, Pete indicated to David that there are operations going on in the Arctic. So Emery confirmed it. He said that there are ancient ruins of cities down there, as we talked about just a minute ago, which leads us to question number 1. Why did Emery refrain from going on a particular expedition by a group in which he stated, I refrain from going because all newbies don't return? That's how dangerous it is. People that want to do documentaries get people to take them down there, and they usually end up pretty much not coming back. If you don't have a specific, really good classification, you're not going down there. And so Emery, you know, he's smart. He's not going to go down there and do something stupid. And this stuff is not to be taken lightly. It's very serious stuff. And he refrained from going on an expedition when he was invited because he knows darn good and well that newbies don't come back. So that was in our series of questions. I usually ask, if you don't already know, I ask questions during the week to kind of pique your interest and get you interested in joining for the main show, which is tonight. And that was question number 1. Okay, so question number 1 has been answered. So let's go down to some more conversation with David Wilcock and Emery. So that explains the dangers of exploring Antarctica without proper clearance, and Emery knows about that. So we're going to talk about corporations a little bit, because corporations, you would think that the governments are conducting all of these things in the secret space program, but there are people with lots of money. There are people behind the scenes running things, and some of you have heard of them before. We've talked about it in our past podcasts, the cabal, the Illuminati, the elite, and some of them are just corporations. And as you know, corporations, they're designed to make money. So there's just, they have so much money, so much money. And so they have, these people, they can't very easily go down and go into the earth and see these ruins, right? They can't very easily do that because of the dangers. But that's nothing to say that satellites and special drones can't be used, and special cameras that snake down under the ice in the South Pole to see these ruins. And so these corporations are run by these private organizations that have access to images and information that was given to Emery from scientists who worked with these people for 2 years, he said. And they have access on location to go down there even if they want to. And so they are mapping the ice to see how long before the underground city will be exposed to, layman's, to us, people, society. Because they're going to have a lot of explaining to do, right? There's going to be stuff down there. They want to try to clean it up because it will rewrite history. And they'll have to explain everything about how we actually got here. And things are going to be very different. But let me show you a little picture. So not only are there civilizations down, ancient ruins of past civilizations down there, but there's also craft that are going to be exposed when the ice melts. It's pretty exciting. Love it. Okay, so This coming up is my very favorite part about this whole show, episode 6, season 1. What they found down there, one of the things that was leaked was a sarcophagus. This sarcophagus was special because it was made of a special kind of metallic material. And, aliens, they're always having, or maybe this wasn't created by aliens, but they're always coming up, they're finding these metallic structures and things that are, strange and they're otherworldly. Well, this particular sarcophagus had no seams, which is typical of the alien craft, right? The way they create those craft is, they're seamless. And so there has to be some sort of technology involved. So this sarcophagus was basically unopenable. They couldn't get it open. They tried, they did everything, and they just couldn't find any way to get it open. They knew that there was something inside because it had all the signs of being a sarcophagus. So the tale goes that they had a psychic woman come in who could actually read the hieroglyphs on this sarcophagus. And she was instructed to sing a certain frequency, which she was sonic, psychic, had those abilities. So she was able to actually sing the frequency. I guess the instructions were on the sarcophagus. And so she held out her hands over the sarcophagus and began to sing. Long, long. Anyways, the reason it's my favorite is I'm a singer too. I used to sing with Andy Williams and lots of bands, and I teach at School of Rock, and it's been a lifelong journey for me singing. So when I heard that, I thought, wow, what an honor that would be. Wouldn't it? Really fun. So here's a little image of that I set up for you guys. So yeah, this is just a little AI creation that I came up with to kind of give you an idea of what it would be like. And so she's singing this beautiful, beautiful frequency. I'm assuming that it's beautiful. And well, guess what happened? It opened the sarcophagus. Kind of cool, huh? So that leads us to question number 2. What might we find inside an ancient archaeological site? So I kind of worded this not in the most favorable way for what I'm trying to say, because it's really about the sarcophagus. But what they found inside of it, I guess, was a lot of literature and tablets, and also artifacts that are from unearthly origin and technology. Now, I'm thinking sarcophaguses probably have remains in them, but they didn't talk about remains that I recall. But so let's just stick with what they would find in an archaeological ancient site, okay? So a lot of literature and tablets, and also artifacts that are often from unearthly origin and technology, which has mostly already been removed, typically. When the technology found is revealed, Emery says it will be a spectacle because it will be from a higher advanced civilization, which had already been there trying to do the same thing that we were doing, which is excavate. They also found craft and beings frozen in time, sticking out of the walls, called stasis beings. Stasis beings. Wow. Stasis beings. So if somebody can elaborate on that for me in the chat, I would love to know more about what this stasis beings is thing. It kind of reminds me of what we talked about earlier, the Philadelphia experiment, where they had done the time travel and it was malfunctioning and they were stuck in the fabric of the ions and whatever it is, molecules of the ship. They were melded together somehow. I don't know what a stasis being is. I would like to know. So if anybody has the information on that, pray tell. Okay, so let's move on. So the discovery of the underground city. Can you imagine? Oh, I would love to do this. I would love to go digging. I have all these fantasies about being a secret space program woman. If you haven't already seen all my little shorts on YouTube. Mostly I do this because the only AI that I have available to me is through the Facebook profile picture thing, and it's always my mug. But as I do more, I'm gonna delve into other pictures and things in different AI programs. But it's really fun. It's just I'm having a ball with it. But wow, to be a secret space program soldier, wouldn't that be something? And it's probably glamorized a little bit. I'm sure it gets ugly. But hey, man, with these med beds, you can have your limbs re-put back on or regrown, and or they'll just take your soul and put you into another body. But that's got to be traumatic, I'm sure. But I like all the glamorous thoughts about being a hero and rescuing people and checking out archaeological sites and rescuing the contents and all that's pretty cool, isn't it? That's why I love cosmic disclosure. They used ground penetrating radar to search for what they had intentionally been looking for was gold and oil reservoirs. That's what they were doing. Go figure. These are corporations. They're trying to make more money. They're looking for gold and oil reservoirs. So this is how they came across all of this. Can you imagine their surprise? Like, okay, let's rewrite what we're doing here. We're not looking for gold now. We're looking for ancient technology. So when they stumbled upon these ruins and these ancient cities, they got actual footage. They pursued this even more. And they used a camera on a snake that goes way down deep into the bowels of the earth. And they got pictures and probably video of all this. So if that doesn't grab you, I would love to see that too, wouldn't you? The comparisons to discoveries under the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So that's what they were saying. That's what I was telling you, that Emery told us a long time ago. What was under the pyramids of Giza was a big mile-wide void, mile-deep void. And that's, of course, what mainstream news just came out with. All the hubbub is about, with Emery having, told us earlier. So that they want to go down there and clean it all up, because when it's discovered, it'll mess up the story of how we got here. So that's just a little recap of that in my notes. Let's go to question numero 20. Okay, so you guys have been hearing about all this assisted technology, conscious assisted technology, right? How'd you like to have some of that? These consciousness-assisted technology devices are of non-terrestrial origin. And so that leads us to question 2. We already did that. Question number 3. Oh, my notes are not smooth today. So consciousness-assisted technology is where they have devices that actually you can communicate with them, and they can show you, they can give you downloads, they can basically do magic, what you would call magic in today's day and age. So that consciousness-assisted technology is kind of like how they explain crafts. The crafts that are biologically connected to the pilots through DNA. That could be related to consciousness-assisted technology. And we're going to have that someday. Things are going to be real different someday. Now, question 3, how did they finally open a sarcophagus? Oh, that's that one already. Let's go to number 4, question number 40. What was inside the sarcophagus? Handheld tools of inestimable value that gave you a holographic reconstruction of historical events that happened during the time the sarcophagus was placed. So that's what was in the sarcophagus. So I wrote these questions like 2 weeks ago. I have been so busy that if I sound a little scattered, that's why. So yeah, there you go. Now, also, consciousness-assisted technology is AI technology that you hold and use your consciousness to operate. It usually automatically turns on. Some of these devices are lineage or frequency related, and you must be the right ancient lineage to have that one little frequency for it to work. In other words, you need a genetic marker in your DNA to operate it. So you got to have like a certain lineage. Maybe, you know, maybe you have it. Maybe you have that lineage. Wouldn't you like to know? Find out? I don't know how you would, but pretty cool. Probably in the future, you'll be able to make your own that's of your lineage that has, I mean, who knows? The future is exciting. That's all I can say. So let's move on to question number 6. Who took over from the Mexican government 5 crafts in which the technology was so advanced they could not get into them? So who took over these 5 crafts? So let's back up a little bit. There were 5 crafts that were discovered, and this was discovered by the Mexican government. And then the there's factions that came and took them. Who were they? So different governments in South America are apparently involved in this, and very recently the DIA military industrial complex and what we would call an MIC secret space program recently took custody of these 5 different craft. They were so advanced that we've got whole teams of estimated 3,000 people working on these craft. Emery confirms 100% that these groups are in control of all the tunnels, all the ships, and all the bodies and all the technology. How do you like that? So we don't, we as normal working people, we don't know about this stuff. We're not supposed to know about it. It's all kept under wraps by these people. But that's why we have disclosure, and that's why we have disclosure, cosmic disclosure, because it's all getting out. And right now I'm telling you about it. So people are learning about it. More and more and more we're being informed. And so we got to spread the word, because some people are afraid to talk about this stuff because they're considered, fringe and conspiracy theorists, which is a lot of people, refer to me as, and you, because you're watching, you must be a conspiracy theorist. So now the South American tunnels with the frozen beings had miles-long tunnels beneath the Nazca lines. And so these frozen beings were embedded in the tunnel walls. We have no more information on that. So they just briefly touched on that. And so it's pretty crazy, all this stuff that's going on down there. Now, Emery, as many of you already know, he got together with a group of people, Stephen Greer being one of them, all about a little being called the Ada being, because this being was found in the Atacama Desert in Chile. Now this was back in 2012. This being is about this big, if that. It is hominoid, but its head is probably as big as its torso. So relatively speaking, its head is huge compared to its body. And that is, not normal. So they wanted to, do some tests on it. Let me give you a brief little history of how this being was found. So the discovery was in Lenoria, an abandoned mining town in the Atacama Desert in Chile. And the local treasure hunter, Oscar Munoz, found it. He found the being wrapped in a cloth in a leather pouch near a church. The ATA eventually ended up in the hands of a Spanish collector, allegedly Raymond Navia Osorio, linked to the Institute for Exobiological Investigation and Study in Spain. The being was not donated to a museum or research institution at the time. It remained part of a private collection of this guy, right? Well, Stephen Greer and Emery got wind of this, so they contacted this guy. So he and his team, Stephen Greer and his team, obtained permission from the collector to study the body for his documentary series. You all know about the movie Sirius. If you're watching this, you know about the movie Sirius, in which Emery and Dr. Greer, conduct a kind of an autopsy on this little being, where they collected samples of the brain and the bone marrow, and they did tests on these. They did CT scans, x-rays, and DNA analysis. And Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford University was the person that actually did the work with the DNA, I believe it was. Let's just say that for now. So Dr. Nolan's peer-reviewed paper was published. Anyways, back to Emery. Now, Emery is being published in Stanford University for coming forward with Dr. Greer about the Ada being. They call it the Ada being because it was found in the Atacama Desert. And so this being, it was, with the testing that they did, they found out that it was not human. And so the actual little Ada being was never actually in Dr. Greer's or Emery's possession, because the collector was there behind the scenes purportedly during the study and during the filming. He was there behind the scenes. Of course, he's keeping a low profile, wouldn't you? So he was there, and he obviously, because that was one of my biggest questions, well, where is it now? Well, they're not sure where it is. Actually, they when they were finished conducting their studies on it, they found that or they didn't find, they returned it. They didn't return it. They just handed it back over to him. It was never out of his the owner's possession, is what I'm trying to say. He was there, and during the movie and the filming and the autopsy. And this is pretty interesting, because the Chilean officials are in the process of trying to get it in their possession. So this thing is pretty important. Yeah, so now Emery, in this episode, Emery has, it's really kind of cute, because David says that Emery has it with him all the time. He says this thing, he says, you always have it with you. I want you to show everybody what it is. So Emery pulls it out, and what it is it's a little replica of the Ada being. And David points out that it has the back of its head shaved off. And Emery said, well, that's where he was able to get the brain tissue. But he said, hey, let's just get a 3D printed image of this so that we can actually print it out. And so he's got it and has it with him all the time. Of course, he didn't create the hole in the back of the being's head. Somebody else did. And it's also important to note, though, that this being, here's the sad backstory to this, is that what happened with this being, how it even came about, how it came into the hands of these people who found it, was remember, it was wrapped in a cloth at a church. Well, what happened before that? Well, supposedly there was a craft that crashed, and there were 5 beings in it. And I believe the others, one was killed, and the others ran off. And then there was the Ada being that was clubbed. I hate to say it. He was clubbed and killed. And they took it and wrapped it in cloth and took it to the church. And if I could find the word they used, they said that it was like, I believe they said that it was a demon, something to that effect. I have so many notes here, people. But basically that was the word that they used, was that it was a demon. So they killed it because they didn't understand what it was, which is typical human behavior, right? And so the church had hung on to it. And then this Munoz gentleman obtained it, and I think he might have even paid the church for it. Anyways, it has quite a backstory. Do tune into Cosmic Disclosure if I'm not doing the story justice. Watch Cosmic Disclosure. You need to see it. It's really cool, and you'll learn a lot. I wonder if there's anybody in the chat. Let's see. Oh, cool. We have, I want to make it an overlay so that everybody can see. So we have Andrew Roth. Hi, Andrew. And Patrick, Giggy. Hey, Patrick, are you going to come on? Anybody want to come on? Oh, let me get the link up. So copy link. Let's copy. Let me go down here into the chat. Pasty Wasty. Can't post messages to some channels. That's okay. Okay, so if anybody wants to come in and talk about anything, all the stuff we just talked about, or any of your own experiences, I would love it. All you have to do is click on that link that I just posted, and you'll show up in the green room. As I always say, I can wait. I've got my little thankful cup because I am very thankful. I hope you all are enjoying your evening. I'm a little tongue-tied. I have been so crazy busy, I can't even tell you. But I'm always conducting my own research here and there, and observing things and meditating, and keeping up with my Cosmic Disclosure episodes. And you should be too. Who's Bim Jim? Bim Jim. Hi, Bim Jim. And yeah. So I used to live in a house, as many of you already know, that had a lot of paranormal activity. Since I moved from that house, that has stopped. So that kind of goes to show that it wasn't connected to me so much. And my daughters live there too with me. So they're grown and they don't have any paranormal activity. So there's your research right there. That's easy. It has to do with the location. And let me see if I can tell you of a couple fun little instances before we head out. If we need to head out, we might just need to wait a little bit for somebody to join in. So I'll tell a story, okay? All right, which one do I tell? What did I tell last? Did I tell one before already? There's so many. Okay, I'll tell this one. All right. So I have a So there's the living room, and there's the kitchen, and I have a separating wall that's a half a wall. The lower is sheetrock and the upper is open so you could see to the kitchen and the living room, right? And oh, really, Andrew? Okay. Andrew says paranormal can be attached to people as well as locations. Oh, okay. Let's see if I can get you. Oh, it's been a while since I've done this. There we go. Okay. Hey, Andrew Roth, paranormal can be attached to people as well as locations. Interesting. I love it. So I installed an antique lamp that was kind of cool because you could swing it from the kitchen and I could do my dishes because my sink was right there. And so I could swing it over and do my dishes. And then if I wanted to read, I had my reading chair under it on the other side in the living room. So I would push it over and, would do my reading, right? Well, one day, it was old, I had to plug it in the kitchen side. It was an antique. I loved it. It was green. I love dark green, right? That old green, those lamps, I don't know if you've seen them. They're like a ceramic green. Anyway, so, and it had a brass long arm that would, move like that. And so one day I wanted to cook something in my crock pot. I unplugged my light and plugged in my crock pot. Forgot about it. Paid no mind for like a couple of days. Didn't read, didn't need it, And then I wanted to read one day under it. And so I turned the light on and it wouldn't turn on. And then I remembered, oh, I unplugged it. So I went to go and what was it again? I think I went to the bathroom and then I came back. I had done everything. I switched the bulb out. This was before I knew that I had unplugged it. I'm trying to remember the story. This is before I knew I had unplugged it, or I remembered. And so I changed the light bulb. It'd been like a week. And so I was like, oh, it's broken. It's an antique. Darn it. So I went to the bathroom, came back out, and I plugged it. I realized it had been unplugged. I remembered. So I went back into the kitchen and I plugged it in, went around and got in my chair, turned it on, wouldn't turn on, and did everything to try to get it to come back on, realized it was broken, went around, saw in the kitchen, it was unplugged. It was unplugged. So I plugged it in and it came on. It just was bizarre. Crazy, crazy. So that's just one thing. It would play with the electric a lot, okay? And then there was another time when my daughters, they were in the back room, and as I was approaching the kitchen, I heard the light flip switch up. I mean, I literally saw it. I heard it and saw it, and the light went on. And I ran into the kids' room, and I said, you won't believe what happened. Come out here. So I called them out, and they came out. And as I was explaining, you won't believe it. I came in the room, and the light just flipped on, and it did it for them. They saw it. The switch flipped up, and the light went on right in front of them. So that was kind of fun. And of course, we were all like yelling and hollering and like, oh my God, can you believe it? So let's see, Andrew Roth, can he astral travel in between spaces as well as people? Who? Emery? Who are we talking about? Let's see. Let's show this next question. Oh, and he can astral travel in between spaces as well as people. Do you want to come on and talk about this? I would love to have you. Is there nobody in there? Oh, you are in there. You don't have a profile picture. Okay. So this is not Andrew. This is Bim Jim. Can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you.
Well, hello. I didn't recognize that you were there because you didn't have a profile picture, but I'm glad to have you regardless. How are
Uh,
you?
Pretty good. I'm just trying to get my avatar thing done here, set it up.
Oh,
There it is.
nice.
Do you know that's a fictional character? That guy right there.
Okay.
His name is. Let me see now. He's in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Have you read those books?
No, I have
Oh,
not.
that's unfortunate. Anyway, I won't go on about that guy. But what he's looking at in the video, he's looking at a spaceship the size of a city that is hovering in the sky, and that's why he looks like that. And I kind of identify with this guy. His name is Arthur Dent. I bought one of those bathrobes. I bought one that looks like that, just in case I go outside and see a spaceship up in the sky. But anyway,
That's funny. I love it.
okay. So my main deal is I I'm a conscious experiencer. I've met 4 different kinds of aliens on 8 occasions, especially the tall white. He's come to visit me 6 times. This is in the daytime, wide awake, no dreams, no drugs, none of that stuff. He's usually walking, although I've seen him drive a pickup truck and I've seen him ride in a Huey helicopter. And so like I say, I've met him 6 times. So he travels in different ways. I know the tall whites quite well. I've studied up on them, and then I met 3 other kinds of aliens, and the thing that ties all my experiences together with the aliens is they're testing me. They show up and they test me. They run some kind of trick or test on me, and you know that's that. I can put together a lot more than that, but I don't want to speculate too far away from what I've actually seen with my eyes, right? I don't like to speculate too far. I can speculate, but I'd rather not. So anyways, yeah, I'm an engineer, and I never asked for this. Like, these things started happening to me when I was like 20 years old, and I was not the least bit interested in the paranormal or ghosts or anything like that. But it's as if I'm being taught. So when I was about 21, I met a ghost, and I tried telepathy with a ghost and communicated with it. And then I started having more experiences. My life was saved by a paranormal intervention when I was about 26 years old. And these experiences kept piling up and piling up. And I was very busy with my career in engineering and all this sort of thing. I didn't have time to read UFO books or any of that. But experiences kept piling up and piling up. And now, well, in about 2015, I started reading up because I had to find explanations for all these things that were happening to me.
Yeah.
And so I started reading up on ufology and paranormal and all that sort of thing. Plus, I retired around that time as well. So I had spare time, and so I've been looking into this stuff. Um, yeah, so I've had a whole range of experiences, and I've been on with Rob G and Tex from Texas Front Porch and people like that. Like, Tex is totally, he's only into Sasquatch and Bigfoots, right? So I've never seen a big I've never seen a Sasquatch, but they're very common where I live. I live in the place where the word Sasquatch came from. I'm right in the middle of Sasquatch country. My friends have seen them. They're extremely common around here. They're so common that they don't even make the local newspaper. They're just all the time people are seeing them. But I went looking for a Sasquatch. A friend of mine who's Inuit, he told me his story about seeing a Sasquatch, and I he told me where he saw it. So that pulled me in that direction up to where he saw the Sasquatch. So one day I got my camping gear on my truck and I headed over there. It's only about 20 miles from my home, and I headed over there and kind of was following his instructions, and I found myself driving my truck through a portal. And
Well, how cool is that?
I I came out the other side of the portal, and I was in a, a place that looks like this place. It looks like space time, but there's little differences, little weird things going on. So
Mhm.
I camped up there. Now I've been through these portals. I'm estimating about 20 times now. That's one time in and one time out. So you go through a portal, you wind up on the other side, I call it, and then you have to get back again. And I figured out how to do that. And it and
I have
I
a lot
get
of questions for you.
Well, I can give instructions, and I have given instructions on my YouTube page. And I put some videos on there that I made, and I tell people exactly what to do and how to get there, and what what a portal looks like, how you go through it, and all this sort of stuff. I've given instructions, but I can't find anybody who will do it. And there's all these people who call themselves researchers.
No.
These people who call themselves researchers, and I tell them, well, I'll tell you where to go and exactly I'll give you instructions, and I met a young man here who has been through these portals. He's about 20 years old. He's a very tall young man. He's a mountain bike rider, and he has a friend, and the two of them go 4-by-ing up in the mountains here. And he and his friend went through these portals.
Hmm.
You know, now he didn't say it that way. He doesn't even know the word portal, as I didn't. The first time I went through a portal, I had no idea what it was. But he did say something that indicated to me that he's been through them. Like his words to me, direct quote would be, every time we go over there, we find a different road system, period, unquote, a different road system. So now I should describe where I live here. It's Western Canada, out of the city. We live along the beach. All the people live along the shoreline. It's a rural place. It's low population, but everybody lives along the beach. And then if you turn around, you're looking up the mountains, right? So we have beach and mountains and logging roads and dirt roads and all that kind of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So we do hunting and dirt bike riding and 4x4, and then that's fishing and whatnot. That's our recreation. And then I've always had native friends as well, and I learned from them. And I was invited to be a speaker at a school teaching. Well, it was called native spiritualism, but I don't like that terminology. So my friend who put me in as a speaker in the school, she called me a knowledge keeper, and I said, "Well, I'm not a knowledge keeper. I can't claim to be that. I'm not native, so I don't want to call myself that. But I just have a bunch of stories to tell. That's all, and a lot of experience and stuff. But so I started learning from the native people when I was a kid, because I hung around with them and I got to meet their mums and dads and sisters and grandmas. I like grandmas; they're great. Oh man, if your grandma starts talking, just listen. Shut up and listen. They'll tell you all kinds of amazing stuff. These are the knowledge keepers, right? Is any I've got instructions like, if you listen to a knowledge keeper, the most
Hmm.
important thing to remember is, first of all, don't interrupt them. Don't ask them questions. Watch them, and you might see them go into a trance, right? And they do. They go into a trance, and then they start reciting things, right? And and remember that, because from one guy, I got instructions on how to make myself invisible. And he was telling a story, and then he went into a kind of a trance, and he said, here's how you make yourself invisible: step 1, step 2, step 3. And I memorized it. And then he went on talking back to his old story out of his trance, and he's talking his other story. So anyways, I've been meditating since I was 17. So, I'm into that, all that stuff. Um, and so I tried it. I tried this make myself invisible thing, and it worked.
Mhm.
I won't tell the full detailed story, but it sure as hell did work. And in fact, it's a trick. It's a mind to mind trick is what it is. It's mind to mind hypnosis. That's how can figure it out. That's how it works. And yeah, I don't know if you've done any of that stuff, like communicating with animals and all that stuff, but I've done all that stuff.
Well, it
Right.
sounds like you're talking about what a lot of beings I hear do, which is cloaking.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, there's different kinds of cloaking. Like we humans now have technological cloaking,
Mhm.
and we call them stealth fighters. And now we're developing plastic sheets that can make you
I've
disappear. So
I've
we're
seen.
working on the technology of it.
Mhm.
And well, I just wanted to add something to my previous story, which is that I I gave those instructions to a friend of mine who's my most paranormal friend. Her name's Penny, and she's the one who started up the school where I was a speaker and so on. But anyway, she's seen Sasquatch, and I gave her the instructions on how to make herself invisible, and she did it to me. I saw her with my own eyes. I actually saw her
Wow.
go, well, reappear from nowhere, and we both laughed our heads off when this happened, right? And that that's a characteristic of people. Like you're quite a cheerful demeanor, I would say. And that's how all my paranormal friends, well, most of them are women, and they are like that. They have a cheerful demeanor. I have a cheerful demeanor. I've even done stand-up comedy, and I tell jokes a lot. Um, and so my friend Penny, I explained it to her step by step by step, and she's one of the few people I've told, but I did tell her. And then she turned around and did it to me like a trick. It's a trick. It's one of the trickster's arts. Tricksters refers to a native person in a tribe who has these abilities and uses them. And they're like in a tribe. You have the shaman, everybody's sort of the shaman, of course. You have the chief and the counselors and the tricksters and the warriors and all these different jobs within a tribe, and that's how the tribe is structured. And it turns out, I don't know why, but I have the abilities of the trickster, and I don't even know why. I never asked for it, but so I can communicate with wild animals quite easily, and I would like to teach people how to do that as well,
My dog. I
and I
want to
can.
talk
I
to my
can.
dog.
Yeah, I can teach people how to do that. It's
Mhm.
You have to learn, you see, and I tell about all these things where I try to teach people how to do these things is I say first you got to meditate.
Mhm.
You must start meditating. Everybody's got to do that. If anybody in the audience, anybody who's interested in paranormal, please meditate. You know, it's uh, it's very helpful,
Mhm.
and if you become really good at it, well, you might start doing telepathy with other people, for example. That's similar to communicating with the wild animals, right?
Mhm.
Is telepathy, and I've done telepathy many, many times. I keep testing it. I've done over 100 tests of telepathy, and I've tested, like I say, wild animals and humans, and I've done it with people a number of times, and sometimes uninvited. But I don't recommend that people do telepathy with other humans to begin with, because there are problems there. It gets into difficulties, lots of difficulties. But there's a caveat there. I wouldn't do it with people if I was you. And a lot of people who can do telepathy, they they refuse to do it. They won't tell you that they can do it because they might want to use it for their own advantage, and it can be used for good or bad. That's one thing about the indigenous teaching. There's lots of morality mixed in with all the stories and instructions and all that. There's morality built into it, or it comes along with the knowledge. And I've
Mhm.
been told by native people that I should not reveal the secret knowledge, and that's why I knew for sure that I'm onto
Oh,
something. Because yeah, it's different from tribe to tribe, but some tribes have strict rules about secret knowledge, and I've told some stories, written them online, and I'm not supposed to do that. I was told, don't do that. That's very bad, you know.
interesting. That's
Excuse,
interesting.
pardon me?
That's very interesting. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Uh, Andrew Roth has some really good questions for you. Let me just list them and you see if you can answer one or all. His questions are you talking about Space Cowboy, otherwise known as Rhodey?
No.
Also, okay, and visions in his meditative state. He wants to know about your visions and your meditative state and telepathy. Well, you were explaining that, but yeah, you're not talking about Space Cowboy?
Never heard of the guy.
Okay, so there you
I
go.
don't I don't consume a lot of fiction. Like I don't watch movies. I don't read fictional books anymore. I have read a few, you know, a little bit of fiction, but I don't anymore. I don't
Well,
bother
I
with
would
fiction.
love to hear about your friend that visits you in the truck that is not terrestrial. And Andrew,
Oh,
the link is you may not be able to get the link. So it's sometimes I guess it says that it cannot be posted on some channels, but it's in the chat if you want to check and see if you can see it. Now,
and this
uh,
has to do with Space Cowboy.
no, I was just addressing him. He wanted to come on and talk with us, but he can't find the link. Now,
Oh, oh, oh,
can I
okay.
address you by Bim Jim, or what would you like me to?
My name's Jim. Jim.
Okay, Jim. Jim, do you feel comfortable elaborating a little bit more about your friend? You said comes in a helicopter. I would like to know,
The tall white.
does he
Yeah.
does he share does he impart information to you? Do you
Yep.
get to go with him? Please tell.
No. Okay. Well, on my YouTube page, I did a video about my first meeting with my tall white friend. I should make a name for him. I don't. But anyways, he's just an 8 foot tall, mostly human looking person. I call him my friend, and I call them people when different kinds of aliens that I've met. I call them people, but that's just
Yeah.
my terminology. But yeah, so there's a video on my YouTube page where I tell that story very clearly and carefully and make sure that's the first time I met this tall white guy. Right now, I'll tell that story now. So this was 2002. I was studying computer because I didn't have a computer, but I had to learn for my work I work as an environmental engineer, and so I had to learn computers. So I went to this place where there's a bunch of free computers, and it's a storefront building. So the front of the large room is all glass with a double door in the middle, and then they've got about 5 rows of 3 computers each, all set up there for anybody to come in and use them for free, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I went there. So I go in there, sit down at a computer, and there was 2 other people at computers, and there was about 5 people like at the back of the room, away from the front door, and they were conducting some business there. And anyway, so I'm sitting there. I sit down at the computer, and I had a CD with me, which was my favorite CD, which was John Mayall Jazz Blues Fusion. I put that on my desk under my right hand, and I turn on the computer, calling up my email and all that stuff. And I heard a noise behind me out on the sidewalk, right? So I turned around, and I'm looking through the glass wall, and here are 5 people on the sidewalk. And there was 4 short guys and one very tall guy. And the short guys were all identical height at about 5 foot 2 or 3, around that height, identical. Now, when are you going to see a group of people like that? One guy appeared to be 6 foot 5 at the time when I first saw him, but I later found out he was crouching down.
Mhm.
Later, I saw him from the side and the back, and I could see that he was wearing a mask over his face, and that he was hunching down to get down from 8 feet down down to 6'5" or so. But
Mhm.
anyways, how often do you see a group of people like that? So I watched them. I thought, well, this is really peculiar. What are these people doing? And they're on the sidewalk, and the four little guys were trying to open the front door, but they didn't seem to know how the door worked. And it's just one of those ones with a hydraulic closing device, and you pull on it and it opens.
Mhm.
But they couldn't figure that out. And I'm watching them. And they look like the Three Stooges, and they're dressed really funny. They're dressed in human clothing, but very odd, like a summer shirt with a winter hat, and all the folding creases were in all their shirts, and their clothing had obviously just been taken out of the package,
Mhm.
and they were acting really funny, and they were bumping into each other. They couldn't figure out how to open the door. One fell down on the ground. They got up again. Anyways, they got this door open. They came through it into an airlock type thing in between two doors. And once they got the door open, the tall guy comes in behind them, and then the five of them got through the next door, right? And I'm watching this, and I'm chuckling at these guys, because they're like the Three Stooges. They're really quite funny,
Yeah.
and they were all trying to hide their faces from me too. So when I looked at them, they would turn their face away because they had hoods and hats and stuff on, right? And so I looked away, and then I jerked my head back, try to look really quick to see them. And I was joking around with these guys. They're so weird. I just thought they were hilarious. And so the tall guy comes in behind him, and now they're all in the same room that I'm in. I'm sitting at a computer. I turned my back to them because I wanted to get back to the computer, right?
Mhm.
So I go back to the computer. Now, the tall guy comes over and sits down at the computer right next to me. And when he was sitting down, he was making a lot of noise. So I looked down underneath his desk, and I watched him fold up his lower legs because they were very long and skinny. And he was
Mhm.
wearing some sort of a skin tight suit on his legs, and he was with his hand, he was pulling his ankle up to fold up his knee so he could fit into this desk, right? And I'm watching this going on. I'm thinking, that's not a human leg at all, right? That is really bizarre, right? And he gets sat down in the chair, and then he put his hand on my CD, which was on my desk. He puts he puts it right on there, right on my CD, and then he speaks, and he says, "What's this?" Indicating my CD. What's this? But he
Telepathically or verbally?
verbally, yes, verbally. The telepathy comes along later, but he says, he says, but with a weird voice, he says, "What's this?" And I later found out about the voice box of the tall white. They do have a spoken language, but it's mostly above 20,000 hertz. So it sounds to us, it would sound like little tiny birds tweeting and insects tweeting and stuff like that. But they do have a voice box and a spoken language. But he was speaking English, right? So he says, "What's this?" And I said, "That's my favorite music." And thinking, well, then he says to me, "Can I have it?" These are the few words he spoke. He says, "What's this?" Then he said, "Can I have it?" And I said, "Well, you can listen to it in the computer if you like." And he says, "Thanks." And that's the last word he spoke to me. And he picks up my CD off the desk, right? And I'm looking at his hand, and it's like a foot long. It's got four long, skinny fingers. Obviously not a human hand. He scoops my CD up off the desk, and he says, "Thanks." And then he proceeds to stand up, which was another complicated process. He had to unentangle himself from this little desk, and his head keeps going up and up and up, and I'm watching him stand up, and I'm thinking, these are not people. I'd kind of clued into this by this time, that these were not, well, not normal people. But he was polite, so I thought, what the hell, I'll talk to him. If he talks to me, I don't care. I'm not one to be I'm not fearful. I'm not dominated by fear as some people are. I've never been like that.
Mhm.
And so anyways, I you know he turns around, walks away with my CD, and I'm thinking, now wait a minute, have I just been mugged or something? I mean, have I been robbed? I couldn't figure it out,
Oh my God.
and he's he's going back to his four little friends. Now, this is when I started having telepathy with the little guys because they were huddling away from me, like they were acting as if they were physically afraid of me, and I spoke to them telepathically. And when I did that, because I when I do telepathy, I yell, and I yelled at them telepathically, and they all shivered when they heard me telepathically. They shivered and they huddled closer together. They were really afraid of
Wow.
me, and I'm not a violent person at all. I'm not. I'm average size. I don't go around starting fights or anything like that. But no, I'm not that kind of guy. And so then I saw, okay, these guys are telepathic, and anyway, the five of them made their way with my CD, made their way out through these doors again, out onto the sidewalk, and they were walking away from me down the sidewalk. Now, this is when I saw the tall guy. I could see first. I saw his mask. He had this wide human mask on his face, and I could see that from the side. And I thought out loud. I thought, "Oh, you're wearing a mask." And he answered me back, and he jerked his head around to face me with his mask. He says, "Do you like it?" I said, "Well, it's okay, I guess, you know." And this is telepathic now. And I said, "Well, it's okay, whatever, man." And they just keep walking off down the sidewalk, and I'm sitting there thinking, I just lost my best CD. What the hell's going on around here? This is really weird. But I have a very better than average memory, you know, so I remember all these details and everything. And that was my CD gone, and that was my first meeting with that fella.
Uh-huh.
And then I had another time. Okay, the time. Okay, yeah, okay. They pulled the same trick on me.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my yard cleaning up on a Saturday morning, and these things all seem to happen between about 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. in the morning when I'm wide awake. I'm doing something, and they just show up. This goes for the other aliens I've met also. Same time of day. I'm wide awake. These are not meditative images or anything like that. They're no drugs, no dreams, none of that stuff. This
Mm-hmm.
is wide awake. These creatures walk up to me, man. I don't know why, but so anyway, I was cleaning my yard, and some of my neighbors were standing around my yard as neighbors do, and I got these two pieces of lumber because I do some carpentry, and they're very extremely valuable planks, suitable for making runners for stairs or something like that. Quite expensive piece of wood, and I was saving them for a job. So I drag these out the front of the yard, and I go back. I start getting more wood, and I'm dragging it out. And I'm going to just putting my yard in order. And this pickup truck drives up and drives past the front of my yard slowly. And it was an older, regular, I think it was a Ford or something like that, half-ton pickup. And it stops just up past my yard, and
Mm-hmm.
these people start getting out of it. Now, I was doing other things, distracted and whatnot, and I look back, and here's these same five guys have got out of this pickup truck now, and
Mm-hmm.
the four little guys, they're huddled away from me. They stay a certain distance away from me, like about 30 feet or something.
Mm-hmm.
They'll huddle at that point, and they seem to be the helpers of the tall white guy. Now the tall white guy walks right up to me again, walks up to me, and I'm standing there, and he points down at these planks on the ground. He says, "What's that?" Again, the same words. He says, "What's that?"
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, well, those are some valuable pieces of wood I'm saving to make some stairs or something." And then he says, "Can I have them?" same the same thing he said before. He says, "Can I have them?" And at that point, I was thinking that this was one of my new neighbors. I thought maybe this guy had just moved into the neighborhood or something.
How funny
And I
is
thought,
that?
I thought he must be a friend of mine or something. I mean,
Right.
to just drive up and get out of his truck and say, "Can I have that?" I mean, I thought he was a friend of a friend or something like that. So I said, "Well, you can borrow them if you want to, but I need them back, you know." And he says, "Thanks." Same word. And I was just beginning to make the connection that this was this same group of people. And anyway, so the little guys get busy and they're picking up these planks and putting them in the back of the pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked around at all my neighbors. So there was about 4 or 5 of my neighbors were standing around in my yard. And I looked at all of them and they were all looking straight down. All of them were standing still, looking straight down at their toes. All of them were, and that was the same situation in the previous meeting. All
Mm-hmm.
the people in the room, they're all looking straight down when I glanced around at them. And now all my neighbors are all looking down at their toes. These people start getting back in this pickup truck, and that was funny because the little guys, they opened up the passenger door and they got in there like it was something they'd practiced, and they all piled in there on top of each other, sort of, right, and closed the door. And then the tall guy went around to the driver's side, and he had to put his butt in and sit on the seat, and then fold himself up again
Mm-hmm.
and pull his legs up. And I saw him actually. I could see him pull his knee up. I was looking in the back window of the pickup, and I could see his knee come up almost to the windshield and then go back down again. And he had to put his leg down in so he can put his foot on the gas pedal. Then he pulls his other leg up, folds that up, puts that in, closes the door. And then you see this guy, this tall white fella, he can read my mind like you wouldn't believe. And he knew bloody well what I was thinking. And I'm looking at the side and the back of his head, and I'm thinking he's wearing that mask again. And again, he flicks his head around, shows me his big mask, human mask, and uh, proceeds to drive the pickup truck, right? Which he's smiling all this time, like he really enjoys. He seems to enjoy driving our machinery. He
Mm-hmm.
seems to get a kick out of it,
He does, yeah.
and from what I've read about these tall whites too, they live on Earth, and they often they like to joke around. They go out in the evenings and go to show what entertainment and stuff like that, and they do all kinds of stuff. They are around here, um, but I've got to know his mind, you know, quite well. So he played the same trick on me a second time, and I'm not seeing. I didn't learn again. What should I have done in that situation? I mean, and he's a little bit intimidating to me because I'm looking way up at him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 5'10". He's appears to be about 6'5". I'm not going to start a fight with a guy that big, right? I don't think so.
Right.
It wouldn't enter my mind anyway. No, the only time I ever got into an actual physical fight as now adult was because some guy attacked my friend. He was trying to kill my friend, and that one time in my whole life that I ever got into a physical fight. But anyway, so so yeah, he drives away in his pickup truck with my property again, and I'm thinking this guy's starting to piss me off. If I ever, then I was thinking if I ever see that guy again, he's going to have trouble with me. I'll tell you. But
Yeah. Well, you got to get your CD back.
yeah, it's okay now. I don't care. I've got on to other music, but now the next time I met him though was he was in that helicopter. Yeah, that was pretty wild. But see, I do a lot of camping up in the mountains here, right? In those days, I'm too old to camp now, but back in those days, I was always camping. I'd go up and live in the mountains during summer for a month or so, and was all rigged up to do that. And I just liked living alone and eating wild berries and stuff. I didn't hunt or fish. I ate a lot of wild berries and hiked around, took photographs, read books, stuff like that, eh? And I enjoyed doing that. And so I trying to shorten this story up. So I bought a new vehicle, which was a 4x4 Bronco, and I
Mhm.
fixed it up inside with a bed and took all the seats out, put in a bed and storage for food and water and all that, and tools and all that stuff, right? So I was kind of very independent in my 4x4. And away I went one day, and I left that morning. See, by this time, by that time in my life, uh, that was in the early aughts, 2005, 6, 7. I was doing a lot of camping,
Mhm.
and I I'd had so many weird experiences that I thought somebody's after me. Somebody is messing with me. Somebody's definitely screwing around with me.
That's not a good feeling.
And I thought it's either the CIA or the aliens. Now I had some trouble with the CIA because I worked earlier. I did some work for the nuclear industry as a metallurgist, and that was my original degree in engineering as metallurgy. And I'd done some jobs for the nuclear industry. I'd found problems. I had a I had a look inside the nuclear industry. I didn't like what I found, so I went on the computer online. And um, I was acting as a whistleblower against the nuclear industry and explaining to these nuclear engineers what they're doing wrong, right? And they're doing a lot of stuff wrong, screwing up real bad. And
Mm.
so I'm a whistleblower.
Mhm.
That's my personality. As an environmental engineer, I also act as a whistleblower.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I I got a weird email one day. It was very peculiar, and it went through all the sensors and everything, and it popped out on my email as a really weird thing, and it was a warning to me because I had sent some scientific papers to the United Kingdom to a friend of mine there who's a master's in physics, and he was pro-nuclear and I'm anti-nuclear. So we were having a scientific debate online about
Fair
nuclear
enough.
power. And so I sent these 6 research papers from Canada to the United Kingdom, and apparently that was against the law, but no, I didn't know that. But there was a law, and I had broken a law.
Mm.
So I got this letter that appeared to be from the CIA, giving me a real hard time and threatening me and telling me that I did an illegal thing when I sent those research papers away, and I wasn't supposed to do that. Okay, fine. Well, I just thought, well, I won't do that again. But so this is why when I was up in the bush camping and all these weird things were happening, I thought it, it's either it's either the CIA or aliens. I'd come to that point by that time in the say about 2007, something like that. This was what I was thinking. And so what else you gonna, I mean, what else you gonna do? I ruffled a lot of feathers. I was quite active in politics as an environmental engineer and stuff like that. I got very deep into it, giving testimony in government legal proceedings and stuff like that. I was pretty much involved in that. So anyway, then what happened? Okay, yeah. So I went out camping that morning, and I when I left that morning, I loaded up my Bronco the night before because I wanted to leave early, and I was going to race up the highway to a different place altogether, go up another mountain that I'd never been up before because I wanted to get away from these people who were messing with me when I was up in the mountains, right?
Mm.
And I thought, well, I'll drive really fast and I'll hide on somewhere in the forest where they can't find me, right? And so
Logical.
that was my plan that day. So I went charging up this little mountain I'd never been before. I got up there through the forest and uh, hid my vehicle underneath the canopy. And I backed in, parked, shut off the machine, got out, walked right out into the middle of the road, and looked about 3 miles away. There was another mountain. And on that mountain, I could see another campsite where I often camped. So I look across and I see my other campsite over there. But right at that moment, there was a Huey helicopter there over that other campsite, and it was flying straight towards me. and it was definitely a Huey. And it took a few minutes to get to me, but as it's approaching, I'm thinking, I'm having a lot of thoughts like the Huey helicopter is an antique. They don't go flying around up here.
Oh,
I've seen them. I've seen them at air shows, and I've seen them in movies, but they're not working helicopters anymore. They're antiques.
mhm.
And here I'm seeing one flying towards me, and I thought, well, that's really unusual, and it's also on a straight line straight towards me. And I'm doing the probability calculations in my mind, which is how my mind works. I have to apologize for that. But
Oh,
yeah, this helicopter's coming straight towards me. I thought this is really freaky, you know. And as it got closer, I could see this very tall guy hanging out the door. You know how in the Huey they could open that sliding door on the side, and in at least in the Vietnam movies, there was be a guy hanging out the door with a machine gun or something. Well, this
mhm.
guy was hanging out the door of the Huey helicopter, and that's when I could measure his height very precisely. I could see he was definitely 8 feet tall, plus or minus maybe 2 inches. That's exactly how tall he is. And now
Wow.
I could see it because he was sitting on the floor of the Huey, and his head was right up near the top of the door, and then his legs were folded up and his feet were on the runners. Well, no human can sit like that in a
No.
Huey. So I went online. I got photographs of Huey helicopters. And I measured it all up, and yeah, he's 8 feet, and he had that big smiling face on him again. Now he's flying towards me in this Huey, and obviously he's coming to see me. There's nobody,
He
no,
found you.
there's no other human within 5 or 6 miles of me. And he comes around in the helicopter. He starts doing a circle above me, looking down at me, and I'm looking up at him. And by this time, I'd figured out that he was fully telepathic, you know.
Mhm.
So I'm looking up at him, and I started thinking at him telepathically, and I said something like, "Oh, it's you again." What
Pretty funny.
I asked him, I said, "Why are you messing with me?" And I shouted that telepathically. I wanted to be very clear. I
Yeah.
want to know why this guy is messing with me. Of course, I want to know that. So I thought
Mhm.
that at him, directly at him. And what he did was he threw his head back and laughed. He laughed at the question, and the helicopter did almost a complete circle right above me, with him on the inside of the circle, me staring right up at him. Then they headed off in another direction, off somewhere else. So okay, fine. Now there were other things about this Huey. For example, the side of the Huey was colored blue. It was not a military color. It was blue,
Mhm.
the whole
That's
side
weird.
of it, and
Mhm.
and it was exactly the same shade of blue that I had painted my Bronco. I painted it myself, and I picked out that color myself, and here it was on the side of the Huey, which makes me think that although what I was looking at appeared to be 2020 vision, 4K video, perfectly as clear as could be,
Mhm.
I think it was an image that he was putting into my mind, and they can do that. They can
Let you
do that.
know he's been keeping up to date on what's been going on with you.
Well, yeah, he is up to date because the next meeting with him, he showed up because I thought I was going to die. I thought that was the end of my life. I'd gone up into the mountains in the winter, got myself stuck, and I thought that was the enemy because the temperature was really low. My vehicle was stuck and all sort of things. So what I was thinking was, I guess I'm going to die today, right? And then I figured I got to walk out, but the temperature was really low. Now, at that point in my life now too, I have braces on both legs, and I have to wear sandals with no socks. And the temperature was about 23 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that.
Yeah, you're not
And
gonna make it.
I'm walking on ice. I got a cane. If I fall one time, I might not be able to get up because I'm quite disabled now. I'm quite crippled now, and and I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And I thought, well, I got to walk, you know. So I got
Mhm.
my cane and I just started walking over this ice on this road. And I'm walking and walking. And I developed a way of walking that I could keep going and keep going. And then I come to a corner in the logging road that's in forest. And I come around the corner and I can see down to the next corner. And there he is standing at the next corner. And again,
There to rescue you.
he's 8 feet tall. He's dressed like a human and he's standing at the next corner in this road. Okay. And I'm looking at him, blinking my eyes, kind of got some tears in my eyes from the cold and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm blinking. Yeah, that's the guy. There he is again, right? And he's got that big smile on his face again, And I looked at him for a little while. I thought at him, something like, now what? What are you doing? And I realized I had to keep walking. So I just kept walking. I looked down, I walk and walk. I look up, he was gone. Now I came around another bend where I could see up ahead again, and there he was again. He kept appearing at the most distant point I could see. There he would appear again. And so I just kept walking and walking, and I walked about a mile and a half, I think, on that ice. And then I saw a guy on a quad. And that I thought, oh, great, maybe I'll live. And there was a guy on a quad, and it was a big hunting quad, and he had his girlfriend in the back. And these hunting quads got a big basket on the front where you put the deer,
Mhm.
the dead deer. And so this guy's coming up the road, and I I was waving at him to stop, but he wouldn't
Yeah.
stop. So I stepped in front of him and I grabbed onto this basket, and I said, "You got to give me a ride out of here, or I'm going to die." And this guy, younger guy on the quad, he he was just a real a-hole, you know. He said, "Get out of my way," and all that stuff. But I climbed into it. I climbed into the basket. I said, "You got to give me a ride somewhere, man." And so he did. He took me a little ways down the road, and then there was some other people there. There was a bunch of like 4 families, and they'd gone up in the mountain to have a picnic or a barbecue or something, right? And I hopped out of the quad and I got a ride home from these people, fortunately. And yeah, so the point of the story, I was thinking this is the end of my life. That's
Mhm.
what I was thinking in my mind because my truck had gone right off the road into a ditch, and it was really stuck real bad, and I had to walk. So I had no other choice, no other option. And then he shows up. But I was thinking all that time, I was thinking, well, I guess I'm going to die today. And then he shows up, right? And I didn't die.
Well,
And
he was he kind of egged you on to keep going to you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you got back to safety.
I got back home. Yep, and my lower legs were turning black. And with this disease I have, there's a possibility of amputation of the lower legs. And so I soaked my feet in hot water, warmed them back up, and they came back to life. But they were, wow, perfect, really, but rough
Mhm.
shape. But I managed to
All
get
right.
home and heal up, and then next day I got a tow truck and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, those are the times he showed up, and and
I have a couple questions for you.
sure, yes.
So, Jim, why do you think that you were chosen? Do you think that you have a past life connection to this being? Do you meditate? You said you do meditate, right?
Yes, I certainly do.
Do
Yes,
you
a lot.
do you feel like you're connected in some way to this
Uh,
being, this tall white? Do you?
well, another person asked me that. They said you probably knew him in a previous lifetime.
Mhm.
And when I think about it, and just the way he behaves, his demeanor, and so on, that
He
yeah,
acts.
that could very well be. I mean, I'm conjecturing and hypothesizing and whatnot, but that's entirely possible. I mean, he seems to know me. He seems very friendly, and he
Mhm.
certainly can read minds. I mean, he
Mhm.
can look into my mind, into my memory. I think there's
Mhm.
indications that he can do this. He can sort through my memory and find images that I would like or dislike and show them to me, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
this is the way with telepathy. I've developed my own telepathy to a point where I can project an image to an animal, right? And I did this with somebody's pet cat, and I got it chasing a mouse that wasn't there. I projected the image of the mouse into the cat's mind, and the cat took off after the mouse, but there was no mouse because I had projected the image into the cat's mind. And I've done many, 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 many experiments like that. And I almost gave away the secret. Whoops. I'm not supposed to tell people how to make themselves invisible, but it involves a similar thing, projecting an image from your mind. And if you listen to these people who heal horses and all this sort of thing, and they say they communicate with animals, and they say it's done in pictures, and I knew all that before, and that's why I tried
mhm,
communicating with mental pictures, and it works exactly the way they say it does.
mhm, mhm,
That's how it works. You can project images into other people's minds, and or some people have this ability. I've been asking a question all around, and I've tried to get people to answer. I'm trying to figure out what percent of the population are doing telepathy, and they know they're doing telepathy. What percent of the population are doing this? Because I meet these people, and of course, we meet each other because
How did you learn to do it?
um, I just picked it up out of books and stuff. I guess. Yeah, I was reading a lot of books, and
And have you
and
said you worked with animals, have they told you anything?
have the animals told me anything?
Mhm. Do you have any
Um,
instances
well,
you could relay to me that or to us that's happened?
uh, well, one thing I say is that I choose to do it with wild animals, not pet animals, and there's a
Mm,
very good reason for that. I've done it with pet animals as well, but I recommend that people try with wild animals first. This is the easiest way, okay? And in teaching, first you teach the simple stuff, and then and
mhm,
that's the way to start. And I think a lot of people can do this because the native people knew all about this stuff. They knew all about telepathy
mhm,
when they first met the Europeans. And they were surprised to find Europeans don't do that, but they were all doing it. They all know about all this stuff. I mean, the thing about the trickster, I read that in a book that was written in, I think it's 17 something, 1724, something like that,
mhm,
where it's called White Slaves of the Nootka. It's about an Englishman who was captured as a slave by the Nootka native people up near Alaska, and they captured him, and he was a slave there. But as a slave, their definition of a slave is just a guy who works, lives in the village, and does what you tell him to do. And then he got married, actually. So this guy who was the Englishman who was a slave of the Nootka people, he actually got married to a native girl and had a couple of kids. So that's how they treat their slaves, right? But
right?
yeah, but by living with them, he learned all kinds of stuff,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he
Yeah.
learned about the trickster, and that's where I read about the trickster in that book, written in 17 something or other. I learned about the trickster, and and then other sources I read about the abilities of the trickster, like they can shapeshift, and the Bushman of the Kalahari can see through time, and all these different things. I
Um,
actually, I met a guy who lived with the Bushmen, and I also met an Australian Aboriginal, full Aboriginal knowledge keeper woman when I was down in Perth. I met this woman, and wow, she amazed the hell out of me, I must say. She's a real knowledge keeper. And oh my goodness, she was just had an amazing mind. And I was so glad I met her. I was at that time, I guess I was 21 years old when I met her, and I wasn't really into too much into this anthropology stuff, but she was an absolute brilliant person. She had memorized because she met a lot of tourists, right? So
mhm,
she memorized the atlas and all the cities in the world and everything about
Wow.
everything. And she asked me, because she met a lot of tourists. She asked me, she says, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Canada, Vancouver." She says, "Oh, Vancouver, yes." And she starts reciting all this information about my city, Vancouver, right? And
Mhm.
the lions. There's these two mountains called the Lions, and there's Lionsgate Bridge, and all this stuff that a
Mhm.
tourist would, the sights of the city, sort of thing, right? She knew
Mhm.
all that stuff. And then there was a couple, these three German guys, German tourists, came along, and they were talking. And she asked them also, "What city are you from in Germany?" And they said, I don't know what it was, but and she starts describing their own city to them from her memory, because she'd memorized
Wow.
books and books and books. I mean, this is a real knowledge keeper, this person.
I had
So
never heard of the term knowledge keeper.
well, this is what we say now. The old word was storyteller.
Mhm.
And when you read some of these old books, they're called storytellers, and every tribe had their storytellers. And yeah, they're called storytellers also, but
Mhm.
now we call it knowledge keepers, because the term story can be fiction or nonfiction,
Mhm.
and that that's not the case. I found it's all true. I mean, I tested some of these things that I was told by knowledge keepers, and they would tell me something like, how to make yourself invisible. I tried it; it works. And they
And
told
by
me,
the way
yeah.
and by the way, Jim, you said that, you were not allowed to you felt that you said you were not supposed to tell people how to go invisible. And why is that? Do you think it's because the
Well,
CIA is after you, or
well, these are powers that the trickster has, and um, the trickster is a good person, like the shaman. You see,
Mhm.
they have like good witch and bad witch also in the indigenous cultures. They also have their good witches and their bad witches. The skinwalker is a real bad witch, but the shaman is a good paranormal, or good person, right? They
Mm-mm.
heal people.
Mhm.
Well, the trickster is a good person, not a bad witch, more like a white witch. So I would be in that language and that terminology, I would be what you would call a white witch, because I don't use it for bad purposes.
Mhm.
And yeah, but I am aware of that whole good witch, bad witch thing, and yeah, I think it's quite real. I
Mhm.
won't get into that subject, but it's
So
in
you
fact,
think that you're not supposed to talk about going invisible because it's
it's a
somebody,
power. It's a power, and it could be used for right or wrong. Like anybody I tell this to, they always say, "Well, why don't you just make yourself invisible, walk into the bank, and pick up, $20,000 or
right?
something?" And I say, "Well, no, I wouldn't do that if I had a gun. I wouldn't do that if I was, that's immoral. I wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
I'm not a thief. I'm just not a thief. I wouldn't do that." But then they don't believe me. They say, "Oh, well, I don't believe you." I don't give it. Yeah, I met some young guys the other day, and I was just introducing them to some of these concepts. And the one guy says, "Oh, I don't believe a word you say." And I don't give a shit whether you believe me
Mhm.
or not.
Mhm.
I couldn't care less. I'm not trying to convince anybody, because the reason I stopped to talk to these guys was because they know Penny's daughter. Okay.
Mhm.
That's why I stopped to talk to these guys. So I wanted to ask them about Penny's daughter, who I also know, as well as Penny and her daughters. And so that's why I stopped to talk to them. And they said, "Well, why are you looking for her?" And I said, "Well, because I know her mother."
Mhm.
And they said, "Well, they're being very defensive and all this stuff. I guess that maybe they didn't like the looks of me, whatever." But I said, "Because I know her mother, that's why I'm looking for her. Do you
Mhm.
mind?" So I started talking about Penny.
Right.
And that's when I got into some of these things, and they didn't believe me. That's when they said they didn't believe me, and I said, "I don't give a
Well, you live an
hoot what you
extraordinary
believe."
life that the average person cannot relate to. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I know,
you know,
I know, I know very well.
so may I ask, uh, do you feel comfortable telling us your age?
Oh, I just turned 76.
76.
Wow, 76. I can't
Wow.
believe it. Yeah. This is another reason why I don't want to turn my camera on. I'm not pretty anymore.
Well,
When I
you've
was
got a
young,
lot. No, we don't judge by looks. We judge by the soul and the
also I
energy. And you've got great energy. And you just sound like such an extraordinary person. And you're so interesting. And I just love talking with you and hearing your stories. Can you tell us? Can you go back and tell us more about? You said you had experiences with Bigfoot, ETs. I would love to hear about those.
well, okay, the other species, so the tall white, and then he has brought with him these little guys who I'm quite sure are grays. There is the grays, there's many different kinds of grays, and they're in different, they come in different heights, and 5'2", 5'3" is pretty common for a gray. And then there's shorter grays and taller grays. But anyways, I'm quite sure they are grays. I'm quite sure they are. They're
Yeah.
fully telepathic. They don't even speak. They communicate telepathically with each other, and I could hear them talking to each other,
Ah,
and it was funny. I mean, they I don't think they're any smarter than the average human, or I thought they were like the Three Stooges when they were talking to each other,
crazy.
and one tried to pull the door open and couldn't. He was too weak, and the other one says, "Get out of the way. You're too weak to do that." So the other guy tries to pull on the door. He couldn't open it. So then I heard the number two, two of us. I heard that term. So two of them got together and pulled on the door and were able to get it
Um,
open. But one of the two fell down on the ground.
that's
And
so
I mean,
funny.
it was comical. And they really don't seem any smarter than your average human, possibly less intelligent. I don't know, but they are fully telepathic, the grays,
They
the ones.
sound. It sounds to me like they're with you more than you know,
Well,
because
I asked them, at one point there when they were huddling in fear, I said, "Hey, don't be afraid of me. I like you guys. I want to talk to you." I said, "I'm curious about you." And they were reacting to my words. So it was quite clear that they are, they're fully telepathic. And so those, okay, there's two kinds of aliens. Now, before, okay, that was 2002 was my first meeting with the tall whites. And then before that, I met the black-eyed kids one day. Oh boy,
oh, I've heard of those.
that was weird as hell. Well, it was very peculiar. But again, I'm claiming they're aliens, and they come here to test us. And this is one thing that throughout all my experience with these aliens, they're always testing me. And and they're just standing there and watching me,
Hmm.
and thinking that I can't see them, because this is the fourth type that I've met. Is
Hmm.
he's called the predator, or also called the Shimmerman, also called the invisible Sasquatch. Have you ever heard of that one?
The invisible Sasquatch? No.
Shimmerman. You can search these things. Now I searched because I met him in about to 90s. It would have been early 90s, 1993. About I met this guy. Oh boy, and gosh, how much detail can I go into? How much detail do you want?
Well, I
Anyways,
mean, this is
he
rated not for children, but I mean,
well he has cloaking abilities and anti-gravity technology. These seem, by the way they work, because I've looked up 30 some odd people who've met this same alien that I've met, who I'm calling the predator. And you can search it yourself, search for sorry, search for Shimmerman, predator, or invisible Sasquatch. Mostly Shimmerman is very common. So anyway, I'm out camping way up in the mountains. I'd gone through a portal, and I'm camping up there on the other side of the portal. And I woke up in the morning and it looked pretty foggy. So I thought this looks really spooky. So I went walking up further up the mountain picking blueberries. I'm eating blueberries for a couple hours. And, and then I head back to my truck, and and I walk down this steep hill, and I get right to, I step off this big rock right at my front bumper. And I look up and I see the bushes at the side of the road are shaking in a way that bushes cannot shake. These are low 2 foot high bushes with little leaves on them, and they're vibrating and shaking, and the leaves were flipping back and forth. And this cannot happen. And there was no wind anyway, but bushes don't act like that, right? And
No.
I'm looking at this, and I had my hiking stick in my hand, and I stepped forward and I pushed my hiking stick into the bushes to separate them, thinking I thought there must be a couple of squirrels in there having a fight or something like that, or little birds.
Right?
Little birds, because I know all the animals up there, and that was the best thing I could think of what it might be. But I poked my stick in there. Now, when I did that, though, the shaking increased and spread out. It went from 1 foot diameter out to like 3 feet diameter, just like whoosh, like this, right?
Mhm.
Which cannot happen. When I see something like this that cannot happen, I realize, okay, here we go again, another paranormal experience, right? So
Yeah.
these bushes go shaking out, vibrating and shaking, and then the circle of bushes begins to move down the side of the road, moving away from me. And I followed it because I still thought there had to be an animal in there, and I was going to poke it with a stick again, but it's moving away from me, and I caught up to it, but then it took off running up the hill, very steep slope there, and
Bush. What ran up the hill?
uh, the creature, which I had not seen yet
Okay.
because he was cloaked. He was cloaked, right? So
Right.
I had not seen him yet, but when he took off running up the hill, he became. I could see his outline, and other
Mhm.
people say this too. Other people have experienced this thing. They say the same thing I'm saying. When he moves, you can see him. You can see his outline, right?
Mhm.
So this guy starts running up this hill through
Mhm.
bushes, all kinds of bushes and little trees and stuff. And what I saw was a moving hole in the forest, running as up a very steep slope and running as fast as probably a human can run. About that, the top speed of your average human. That's how
Mhm.
fast he was running up this hill, and I could see the shape of him. And he was very wide, like really big hips and thick legs, and the shape of a Sasquatch, basically.
Uh-huh.
And he's running up this hill really fast, right? And he goes up and up and up and over and disappeared over the top, and he was gone. That was the last I ever saw of him. But what I saw was a running hole through the forest. So when I went online some years later, I read another guy who wrote in the comments that he had seen exactly the same thing, and he described it as a running hole through the forest, which is how I had also described it. This other fella used the same words I used exactly, a running hole through the forest. And yeah, so this is how I know I've I use superior methodology because I'm an engineer. I've actually given lectures on the scientific method and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, that was that was either I can't put those two aliens in order, the the Predator and the Black-Eyed Kids. But anyways, it was around the same time that
Oh,
both
oh
these
yeah.
things happened. So anyways, he runs up the hill, and and uh, and I tried to tell one of my friends about that. She flat out didn't believe me. Now, this is a woman who told me she saw a Sasquatch. I believed her. But when I told her what I saw, she did not believe me. It's just too weird, you
Not
know?
there.
But then I find all these other witnesses, lots and lots of them. That,
I think you have a different type of, I'm going to say it, I'm going to put it out there. I think your DNA is different. You're wired differently than a lot of us, most of us.
well,
I
that's
wouldn't say all
being
of us, because there are a lot of people that are like you, that are psychic and have these abilities that they can see these things.
well. That is under discussion. There's a lot of discussion about that. Yeah, and I don't know for sure. Like I've been asking people what percent of the population is telepathic, because every once in a while I'll meet another telepathic person, and it's clear as day when they send me a message in my mind. They can send an image into my mind. There was a lady in the library. I was sitting there reading in the library, and she sent a mess an image right into my mind. And I knew it came straight from her because the image was not perfect. See, it's difficult to create a really perfect
Well,
image.
you have to wonder if you're telepathic, if somebody's telepathic, you would think they could be in the grocery store and testing people out and like, no, they're dead. They don't hear
Mm,
me. Oh, let me try them. And they don't hear me either. Oh, that person just looked over their shoulder because
yeah.
they heard
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
You would think that they would conduct these,
Well, a lot of
checks.
people keep it hidden. I know that,
Uh-huh.
uh, because it can give them an advantage. Like, I knew a guy who was a very successful real estate salesman, very successful, and I had done some work for him. And the reason he was so successful is he had this ability, right? That's why. And I know that. And, uh, I know he's powerfully telepathic, and he uses that power to sell things to people and misrepresent what he's selling to them. So he's basically a thief.
Whoa.
So he's using this ability to become very, very,
Unethically.
very,
Yeah.
very rich. Hmm? And that's
Unethically.
unethical to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't like that. But yeah, and there's many people like that. I mean, I'm not saying every rich person is a telepathic freak or anything. Oh, here's another a place I read about this. Did you ever hear of the Heaven's Gate cult and Marshall Applewhite?
Yeah, not Marshall Applewhite, but
Okay.
the Heaven's Gate. That was like what, 10 years ago or something?
Yeah, a little longer ago than
Yeah.
that. I read everything I could
That
on that.
wasn't Was that in the 90s? Like 95?
I think it was, yeah, the 90s,
And
something
they
like
were gonna
that. I
go
don't know.
see Hale Bopp. They thought they were gonna go get on was that the one I'm thinking of?
That's the one.
And
And
they
they
were
had
gonna get on
pockets.
the comet?
Yep, that's the one. And they
Mhm.
they had pockets full of quarters because Marshall Applewhite had told them that there are video games on the spaceship, and we'll be on the spaceship very happily playing video games, right? So
Oh,
yeah, that was weird. But I searched for all the information I could find on that, and there were about three people who had joined the cult and then dropped out. And they said, what they say is what's important. They said he had mental powers. He could put a dream in your mind. So you'd fall asleep, have a dream, and it would all be constructed by this Marshall Applewhite. And it would be a dream, whatever he wanted to deceive them into doing. And he was a really evil guy. He mass murder suicided like 30 some odd people. It's about
yeah.
as bad and evil as you get. And so that's another aspect to all of this. There's still right and wrong,
Mhm.
morality out there. It functions. It seems to function in all realms, and it's our consciousness too. You see, it's. I know now that I am a consciousness and that I function through time. I've probably been through a number of different lives, although I don't remember them.
Mhm.
I don't claim to, but uh, we are a consciousness experiencing life. Eh, I think the Buddhist explanation is very good. I think they have a lot of wisdom there, and a lot of what they say is true, I think.
Mhm.
And they talk about, I think is it 9 levels of existence, something like that?
I
Some number like that. And
Yeah, I don't know those details.
then the Christians, they have like 3 or 4 different concepts of this, different levels of existence, right? Like heaven, hell, and the temporal plane.
Mhm.
That's in Christian language. And then in Buddhism, they have similar concepts where the consciousness, the soul, passes through these lives, and we're supposed to learn something, right? Apparently, that's the idea. We
Exactly.
live from birth to death, and during that journey, we're supposed to learn stuff.
Mhm.
Apparently, this is the whole deal,
Mhm.
as I understand it.
Yeah.
And as I, I'm tending in that direction. Although, when I was younger, I was certainly an atheist. But once I met ghosts, more than one ghost, I started thinking, well, better listen to everybody because these atheists, I got tired of atheists. They're pretty goofy people. I
What's
don't
your
even
ghost story? Tell us your ghost
ghost
story.
stories. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, the first one. It's again, I think it's funny, but there was I was living down in Australia in Wollongong
Oh,
on the east coast, south of Sydney. There, small town. I always seem to wind up in a small town next to the Pacific Ocean. That's where I live now. I always seem to wind up in these places. But anyways,
you're
so-
where are you at? You're in near the Pacific Ocean?
yeah, Wollongong, near south of Sydney, Australia.
Oh, how fun is that?
Yeah, pardon me.
That's really cool.
Oh, I almost stayed there the rest of my life. Really nice, but the weather was too hot, and I had to get. I can't. I like snow. I expect snow in the winter, and when you see Santa Claus at a campsite and the temperature is 105 Fahrenheit, and there's a guy dressed up in a Santa Claus suit, it just doesn't seem right. So, anyways, I came home eventually. But when I was down there, though, I was in Wollongong. So I arrived in Wollongong, Australia, drunk out of my mind, and fell out of a car that I got a hitchhike in. Fell out of the car, pulled my pack after me onto the sidewalk. Right, that's how drunk I was, and I don't, I never did drink very much, but that day I did. Anyway, so said goodbye to the guy who gave me the ride, and I
Mhm.
got up with my pack on my back. I walked a little ways till I found a park, this little
Mhm.
park. I went into the park, and there was a gazebo and a picnic table or something. And I laid down there and passed out.
Mhm.
Next day, I wake up. In the morning, I woke up, put my pack on my back, and I walk out onto the road. And this Volkswagen Bug screeched to a stop right beside me. And door opens. This hippie guy gets out. Another guy gets out. They say, "Get in, get in." And they push me into the back of this Volkswagen Beetle, and away we go down the road. They drive me away, and they say, "Where are you from?" I say, "Well, Canada." They say, "Where are you going?" I don't know. I didn't know where I was going. I slept in a park the night before, so I don't know where the hell I'm going. So they said, "Well, come on over. We got a place for you to live." They took me to an abandoned house where I could live. Right. So they got me in there, and it had electricity and running water, cold water, and a bathroom out in the backyard. But so I lived there for a while and got to know all these people. And it was a big. It was a hippie gang, right?
Yeah.
I got photographs of this. It was just party, 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 man. It was just fun all the time, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, a lot of fun. But so I'm in this gang of hippies. We're doing everything that hippies do, including dropping acid and going to concerts, which is what hippies have to do. If you're a hippie, you got to do that. So I did all those things. I only took acid about 5 times, but and then I thought, well, I've learned as much of that. This is all I need to know about that stuff. So I never
Mhm.
got too heavy into drugs or drinking, really.
Mhm.
So, anyways, so I'm in this hippie gang, and and they had lots of friends around town. So all of a sudden, I know lots of people. I got lots of friends. One day, I'm walking down the sidewalk in town, and this older man who I knew, he was 45, I think, but at the time I thought, oh, an old guy, you know. He steps out in front of me on the sidewalk, so I'm walking along, and he says, "Hi, Jim." And I said, "Oh, hi, John. How's it going?" He says, "Oh, pretty good." He says, um, "How would you like to come out to my farm and meet my family, and we'll feed you, and you don't need anything. We'll feed you. We got a bed there, and how would you like to come out for a visit? I said, yeah, that sounds great, because I'm a bit of a tourist anyway, so that sounded wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So we get in a small car. We drive not far out of town. He's got a little farm there, and he and his wife were Christians, and they were taking care of a bunch of orphans. They had like about 15 orphans there who they
What?
were taking care of. And that was the whole point of their farm, you know. And so they're raising these kids. The kids were between 6 and about 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was all very orderly and all set up. And then John, the sun was just going down.
Mm-hmm.
And John says, "You can sleep here in this house." And there was a small old house. It was like a 1-story, 3-bedroom, very, very old house, had no electrical wiring in it. That's how old it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Oh, you can sleep in here." So he leads me in to this house, and he had an oil lamp because it was getting dark. He leads me in with this oil lamp up to a bed, which was the only stick of furniture in the whole house. And he leads me up to this bed. He says, "You can sleep here." He turns around and hurries out the back door with the oil lamp, and I'm left there sitting on a bed in the almost dark. But he'd gone, right? But
Mm-hmm.
even as he went out the back door, I heard these noises around me. I was hearing this clicking, bumping sound. Like I imagined that somebody was repairing something, and they were putting the pieces together on a bench, and they were, click, bump, bump, clank, clunk, clank, and there were metallic and wood clunks and all this. I heard the sound, and John was gone out the back door, and I'm hearing this sitting on the bed, and I thought, well, maybe John is doing something. Maybe he went into another room and he's doing something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was. So, sort of, there was a little bit of light from a light outside, so it wasn't completely dark, and I laid down on the bed, and when I put my head back, closed my eyes, this noise increased in frequency and volume. And click, click, bump, 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 click, 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 clang, clang,
Mm-hmm.
clang,
Mm-hmm.
and it was annoying. It was making me feel annoyed. And I didn't like that, But very quickly I had the thought, this sure sounds like a ghost. I mean, that's what I hear ghosts do. You hear that. I
Yeah.
didn't know it or believe it, but I put this together. Gee, this sure sounds like a ghost, all right. And I would have been 21 at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing this click, click, bump, bump. And I thought, now what the hell is that? So I sat up, and the sound decreased in frequency and volume. It went down. When I stood up and looked around, the noise quietened down a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into the one other room there, because through the door I could see a bench. So I walked into this other room. There was a bench there, a workbench, and not much else.
Mm-hmm.
And I had thought that it sounded like somebody working on a bench. And then I go into the next room, there's a bench there. Well, this was getting a little freakier, a little more and more paranormal. And
Mm-hmm.
I was already aware of these paranormal things happening. So um, I was starting to think, well, this sort of sounds like a ghost, I guess. So I went back into the bed, laid down, and again, when I laid back, the noise increased. So I did a few experiments with that, you know, uh, see if the noises were in connection with me and with my mind or with my emotions or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, okay, um, it's a ghost. So what? It wasn't threatening me in any way. I did not feel afraid of it. In fact, I felt sorry for this ghost when I thought about its existence of hanging around an old house for 100 years, and all he can do is make these little bumping, clanking noises. I thought, geez, I feel sorry. I felt sorry for the guy. I thought,
Right.
what kind of an existence is this? And these are really the first time in my life I'd ever really thought about the afterlife very much at all, because like I said, I was an atheist at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
was an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, what I'm putting together everything I know about ghosts, and I'm thinking, what a miserable existence to hang around an old house for 100 years. I mean,
I've
that's
thought
just
the same thing.
so I was not impressed by this ghost. I must say that he was I thought of him as a failed ghost, and I, was not impressed. I certainly wasn't
A
afraid of
failed
him.
ghost.
This
That's
is
so
all the
cute.
power he had.
Yeah,
That's all the
I
power
thought
he
the same
had.
thing. I've often thought, well, what are they doing? They're just kind of having a purposeless existence. What is the purpose of that? And
Hmm.
I have wondered the same thing. But
Yeah.
but Jim, I have to
Hmm.
tell you, I think you're one of the most interesting people I have ever spoken with. And we're just about running out of time, but I want to invite you to come back on and tell more stories if you have more.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of stories. I went on some other shows like this, and at about an hour and a half, I pooped. I'm done for the. I haven't told all my stories, but I'm pretty tired after an hour and a half. What's it been now? I don't know. I don't care. I
It's
feel
been
fine.
about yeah, it's been
Have you
about an
got
hour and
time
a half, I think.
just for the end of that ghost story? Because
Yes,
it has a crescendo at the end of that
I
ghost story.
can't wait. Please tell it. I didn't
Oh,
know if you
okay.
were done or not.
So I'm thinking. So I thought, well, I'll try telepathy with this ghost.
Mhm.
I'd already done telepathy at the age of 21. I was already familiar with it. So I asked him again, you yell with your mind. That's how I do telepathy. So I yelled at him, "Do you know you are dead?" was the question I asked him. Are you
Good
aware
question.
that you are dead? Well, this I got back from him kind of a shaking fear, kind of a feeling like he didn't like the question at all. He didn't like that question, and it upset him. So I upset him, right? He was upsetting me. I upset him,
Hmm.
and uh, and I realized that, and I realized that you know I I got some power over this guy. So I said to him, "Can I swear on your show?"
Oh, go right ahead. Liven things up.
Yeah. Normally, well, I do swear in normal conversation, but anyway, so I had thought to this guy, "Are you aware that you are dead?" And this changed. He changed his sound, his behavior, everything, and he was upset about the question. So I said to him, I says, "Well, I said I'm alive, and I only care about living people, and you are dead. So why don't you just fuck off?" And I screamed that with my mind. I screamed at him, "Fuck off," like that. Uh, And then immediately after I thought that, there was this huge explosion of sound, like a brick hitting a wall.
Wow.
And I guess he did have that much power, but it was just like a brick hitting a wall. Kaboom! But then there was this transition where he was gone, and I could hear the birds again, and I could hear the breeze, and everything was beautiful and wonderful. And I felt great. I felt very relaxed, and I could hear the traffic way out on the highway some distance away. All the sound came back to normal, and many people say that as well. And yeah, I experienced that a number of times. When your paranormal experience is over, everything comes back to normal again, and the sound comes back. So anyway, that's what happened. But the next morning, I had a best sleep of my life. I think I slept for like 9 hours, which I never do. But I woke up in the morning, the sun was up. I walked out the back door, and there's John sitting at the picnic table. Nobody else, just John with his pipe. He's sitting at the table there, and I sat down across from him. And he says, "So, how did you sleep?" You see, because he had set me up for this,
Oh,
and
that's
I had,
why he put you in that room.
yeah, and I had figured that out by this time, but I didn't care. In fact, I was going to thank him because I had a new experience. I learned something new. I thought that I was going to say that. I like your trick you played on me. That's okay with me. I don't mind. I learned something new. It's fine with me, you know. That's what I was going to tell him. But what I said to him was, he says, "How did you sleep?" I said, "Oh, I had a great sleep after I got rid of the ghost." And at that word, John freaked out. See, he freaked out, and he kind of took off. Like, I think he thought that I would be angry at him and that I would, be angry, but I was not angry at all. Not in the least. I didn't mind. I mean, if ghosts are real, I want to know about it, and
Yeah.
that's cool.
Well, you
I
confirmed what he believed. He believed there
mm,
was a ghost there, and so he set you up to see whether he was right or wrong.
yeah,
Sounds like.
yeah, that's right. And I learned too when I got back to my place where I was living in the town there in
Mhm.
Wollongong. I learned he'd done this with other people, and that one guy had stayed in the house for a period of time communicating with this ghost. And this was another guy's experience. And that's all fine with me. I mean, I don't care.
Mhm.
I don't, and to this day, I cannot understand why anybody would be afraid of a ghost. Why? I don't get it at all. But that's just me, I
Well,
guess.
I'll tell you what. I mean, when it's your first experience, it's a little unsettling. Uh, because you are not used to it. It's something you don't understand. And we're afraid of what we don't understand.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my experience is, you know, I'm not, I don't have the fear anymore, but I remember being fearful in the beginning of my experiences with ghosts.
Hmm.
But now I would probably do, if I had the time, I would do a paranormal investigating, which I intend to do at some point. And I don't think I'd have any fear doing that. I just wouldn't want to have any negative experiences with negative beings. That's the
Hmm.
only caveat for me. But other than that, I've already been through it, and you feel the same way, right? If
Yeah,
you've been
yeah,
through it already. So,
yeah. I've survived it, and I've had one really scary paranormal experiences out of I don't know how many. I can't even count them, 40, 50, something like that. I had one that really scared me, and but that was kind of extreme. Again, it was ghosts, but it was a bunch of them. It was what I saw up in the mountains was a ghost logging operation. You might have heard of like ghost ships.
that's
Floating.
residual. I heard that's like a residual energy that's replaying. I've heard of that. And they don't have those ghosts aren't sentient. They're just a replay of the energy. I've heard of that. I don't know if that's what it is, but I
It's
suspect that
it's
that's what it was.
It's a longer story, which I don't have time for, but I will. I'm looking for a photograph. Here it is. I have a photograph that might be a photograph of a ghost, and I've got it right here. I'm looking it up. There it is, right there. Now, ooh, wait. Okay, now I'm going to try to send you just one photo. I think it's share screen. Press H. What? Oh, there it is. Okay, now, okay, this might be a photograph of a ghost. I've got two of these pictures. Now, where are we at here? Share. Ooh, share, cancel. Ooh, boy, that's weird. Where is it? I'm looking.
Did you put it up?
Not entire screen. No, just a picture. I just want to add a picture. So I'm going to cancel this and try again because I only want to send one picture.
Well, you know what? On that note, I think we should probably save it for the next time you come on,
Sure.
as we are out of time
Okie
for
doke.
the rest of the show tonight.
Yeah, that's pretty
We've
fair.
been on for 2 hours, and I so enjoyed every moment with you, Jim. So I hope you do come back on and visit us again and share your latest adventures, and love to hear more of your stories.
Yeah. Well, I was your 39th subscriber.
Oh,
because
okay.
I could see that you were a new podcast. And I know, some about podcasting and all
I
that
appreciate
and
that.
what it
I
takes.
appreciate that.
And yeah, sure, I'll come on. Yeah, no
That's
problem.
very kind of you. And to spend, to come on and donate your time to this new podcast and share your stories is just very, very heart centered. I thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, when I examined your page and so on, and I really like you. You got a great way of doing things. I like your description. You have a description there. You've written out
Mhm.
your
Thank you.
opinions on things, and I really like that very much. And I've been on with a few others. I like the smaller shows. I don't want to go big time. I just like chatting. If people listen, I'll talk.
Well, you're awesome. And
Yeah.
I just love talking with you. So on that note, I think we should wrap it up. Hey,
Okie doke. I'll check out. How do
Jim,
I?
you have a good night. Get some rest. What time is it in Australia?
I'm in Canada now. It's
Oh,
9 p.m.
oh,
on
okay.
on
So
the
yeah,
west
we have
coast.
the same time. Okay. Well, good night to you,
Nighty
and
night.
we'll talk again soon. Bye, Jim.
Leave. I see it.
Hey, that was really interesting. See, that's what I mean about having just anybody can come in on the chat and talk. This person was so interesting. And I really believe that these people that have such experiences on a regular basis, I believe that they have a special sense about them. They've got a sixth sense or psychic, they've got some sort of ability. And I think Jim probably has something like that because he has a lot of experiences. What a life, huh? Wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah, a lot of fun. So I guess we'll end this podcast for tonight. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you're just listening at a later date, welcome, and we'll do this again. And you guys all have a great, great life. Okay, we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.